President Trump finally emerged from his self-imposed exile for the Champion of Coal event at the White House, where he stunned the entire room with grave concern for his well-being. In the middle of his speech, he stared down at a page in front of him, took a long inhale, then slowly lifted his head with his eyes vacant of expression, what sounded like, "I'm just going to show it to you."
Me, and I'm proud to officially name the undisputed, when did this come out, Mr. Speaker? The undisputed champion of beautiful, clean coal.
It made no sense whatsoever. It was as if what he was reading, what he was trying to say, and then what he actually said were three different things. In a normal situation, a doctor would have been called. But this was the President of the United States, and optics were all that mattered. His sycophants and those quietly pulling the strings behind the scenes clearly think that projecting the image of a functional leader is more important than the man's health or the country's safety. His performance troubles weren't unexpected, but they were still jarring. Because when he first started the speech, he had this almost rehearsed enthusiasm as he repeated, "clean, beautiful coal," like a chant someone had made him memorize just before going on stage. Which makes sense because he and his cronies are following the fascist playbook, where if you say something enough times, people forget the truth. That's how propaganda works. Joseph Goebbels, who ran propaganda for Hitler, once said that if you tell a lie big enough and repeat it over and over, people will start to believe it. Trump didn't invent this strategy. He's just messier about it. But the goal is the same. It was clear he was reading from a prepared script, probably just had bullet points to keep things simple for him, but even that seemed too much for him. He kept looking down, he was confused and sluggish. He struggled to get through basic words before veering off into one of his usual rambles. At one point, he said to the coal workers, "You would not switch with a guy who had a beautiful penthouse apartment on Fifth Avenue. You would not switch with me. That was me. And now I decided to do this. Such an easy life. And now I decided to do this." And then he called them special people. He was standing in front of coal workers, men and women who risk their lives and long-term health every day, and telling them that they wouldn't trade places with him and his Fifth Avenue penthouse. The arrogance of that statement is staggering, and the disconnect is beyond comprehension. This wasn't just him being out of touch. It was delusional. A man too far gone to understand how absurd and insulting his words were, or how they revealed his utter lack of respect for people in front of him. And something I keep asking myself is how much more of this can our country take? At what point will he just be propped up with a blank face in front of the camera, his mental ability clearly completely gone, and his people will tell us all that he is stronger than ever? When I have those thoughts, it's in those moments that the frustration and simmering rage towards his enablers becomes almost too much for me to bear. And in that moment, my mind can't stop spinning over the very real fear that if we had a catastrophic attack or disaster, this is who we're expected to believe would be capable of protecting the country. And we also need to contend with the fact that we are witnessing something that looks disturbingly close to elder abuse. And behind that, a government functioning on deception, quietly controlled by people the American people didn't even elect. And as shocking as that all was, it was only the beginning. In front of a room full of survivors, Pam Bondi humiliated herself and disgraced the entire Department of Justice. The House Judiciary Committee held a hearing on the Epstein files, and what should have been an act of accountability turned into a farce. The Attorney General of the United States brought ready-to-go insults, shouted over members, and accused Republican Representative Thomas Massie of Trump derangement syndrome, and even refused to look at the survivors sitting just feet from her. When Representative Becca Balint calmly asked about Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick's ties to Epstein, Bondi lashed out and accused Balint of anti-Semitism, even though it is commonly known that Balint's grandfather was killed in the Holocaust. It was a horrific and truly disgusting moment. Bondi stooped so low that she weaponized Balint's identity to deflect attention from criminal connections. This wasn't a hearing, it was a disgrace, and it was calculated and deliberate. And then there was Bondi's treatment of the survivors. beginning with the brutal fact that many of their identities were fully exposed in the DOJ's unredacted Epstein files. These women had endured cruelty that many of us could never imagine, and Bondi's DOJ released their names while protecting the men who were accused of these horrendous crimes. The redactions shielded the powerful and exposed the powerless. That decision was a betrayal, and Bondi refused to apologize to the victims for what she and her office did. When Representative Jayapal asked if she would turn to the survivors in the room and apologize for including many of their names in the unredacted Epstein files, Bondi refused. When Representative Hank Johnson pressed her again, she deflected and remained hostile, accusing Democrats of theatrics and acting as if congressional oversight was some kind of personal attack. And then came the moment that will forever haunt this country. Lawmakers turned and asked the survivors directly, "Has the DOJ reached out to you? Have they asked for your statements?" And one by one, each survivor shook their head. Every single one of them said they had not been contacted. Then, when they were asked how many had been completely ignored by the Department of Justice, there was silence so heavy it almost swallowed the room because every survivor raised her hand. That moment should be burned into our collective memory. These are women who had been trafficked, abused, silenced, and erased, many as children. And when they bravely showed up to be heard, the Attorney General of the United States wouldn't even look at them. That was a display of cowardice, and it still gets worse. Many of these women had never publicly disclosed their identities. They were anonymous survivors for a reason. They didn't want their past trauma to become their entire identity. They feared for their safety. And the weight of being publicly linked to Epstein is not something anyone should carry without consent. And yet Bondi's DOJ published their names. They redacted the names of wealthy men and powerful officials, accused co-conspirators, financiers, and friends of Epstein, but they left the victims exposed. They protected the powerful once again and betrayed those already bearing the ultimate cost. And maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was bureaucratic carelessness. But maybe it wasn't. Because if you wanted to send a message to survivors not to speak up, this is exactly how you do it. You protect the men and you out the victims. You crank up the public pressure until they retreat into silence once again. You let them know they'll be punished for being brave. And the only conclusion we can draw from this pattern is either willful negligence or something much worse. Either way, the result is the same, and history will remember it. And so will each of us. The marathon hearing that lasted close to 5 hours continued with Representative Ted Lieu directly accusing Bondi of lying under oath. And she erupted. She shouted back, "Don't you ever accuse me of a crime." For Bondi, this was all theatrics, an embarrassing performance meant to appease her boss, Trump. It was steeped in the same frantic arrogance Trump displays when he's cornered. He lashes out, throws insults, and feigns outrage. And he never actually responds to the questions or takes responsibility. But then came the moment that might be the biggest story of the day. When Bondi was reading from her notes, the press caught a glimpse of what was on the page. And what it was a printed list tracking Representative Jayapal's personal search history, exactly what she looked up while reviewing the unredacted Epstein files. That search happened on a DOJ-owned computer inside a secured DOJ facility, with DOJ staff present. Bondi wasn't supposed to have that information. No one was supposed to have that information. And the fact that she brought it with her, read from it in public, and then used it to try to discredit a sitting member of Congress tells us everything. It means the Department of Justice is spying on lawmakers during their oversight investigations by keeping records of what elected officials search. This is not how democratic governments work. Representative Jamie Raskin put it perfectly, calling it Orwellian and a violation of the separation of powers. The DOJ does not have the right to monitor Congress, especially not when they're doing oversight. But Bondi and the people around her don't seem to understand the lines they've crossed. Or maybe they don't care because they think there aren't any. She thought she was scoring political points. What she really did, though, was to confirm that this government is corrupt and abusing its power to protect itself. And what's so revealing is how sloppy it was. She just brought the printout, read from it, and didn't expect anyone to notice. These aren't criminal masterminds. They're reactive, reckless people. The treatment of the survivors in that room was horrific. And this moment, the DOJ spying on Congress is just as revealing because it shows us how far they're willing to go to protect the people in power and punish those who ask questions. This is the kind of mistake that tells the truth. We've seen this kind of surveillance before. In places like East Germany, where the Stasi maintained vast files on citizens, journalists, and lawmakers alike, everyone who questioned the regime became a target. Their conversations, reading habits, and associations were documented and used against them. That's what it looks like when a government decides it's no longer accountable to the people, but instead to their authoritarian leader. That's what this moment echoed. Bondi has not indicted a single Epstein conspirator, but she came armed to humiliate and intimidate the very people trying to get justice. Her DOJ missed the deadline for file release by over a month. It redacted co-conspirators' names but left victims exposed. It spied on Congress, and Bondi, handpicked by Trump, showed up with pre-printed insults and a burn book like she was in some twisted version of Mean Girls. It was a coordinated performance, just like what they have done in Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia, where show trials became tools of propaganda designed to intimidate and cover the truth. Bondi's behavior fits squarely in that mold. This is what justice looks like now under the Trump regime. But even on a day like this, there were sparks of resistance because we learned the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, led by Jeanine Pirro, tried to indict 6 Democratic lawmakers who posted that 60-second video urging military members not to follow illegal orders. These lawmakers were veterans, former CIA and Navy officers, and public servants who were accused of sedition for reminding troops to uphold the Constitution. Trump called the video seditious behavior punishable by death, but a D.C. grand jury refused to go along and these 6 were not indicted. This is not a good news story. That's what Mark Kelly said. This is a story about how Donald Trump and his cronies are trying to break our system. Slotkin put it plainly. Being quiet doesn't actually make you safe. Going on offense seems to be the only way to get their attention. And I know this might not feel like good news, but it is something. Legal professionals often say you can indict a ham sandwich because the bar for indictment is so low. But that didn't happen today. A group of regular people in Washington, D.C. said no, and that means the legal system held, and so did our fellow Americans. What we are witnessing is the criminalization of dissent. The DOJ tried to bring seditious charges against veterans who exercised their First Amendment rights, which is exactly how strongmen rule. The justice system is no longer a neutral institution. It's a tool of punishment that Trump is using on his revenge tour. And we still have to stay alert. Just because a grand jury says no doesn't mean the regime will stop. We have to stay vigilant because their next move against these 6 lawmakers could come at any moment. When I sat down to tell this story, the overarching theme of everything that's happening is that there have been so many scandals that should have ended Trump's presidency. So many crimes, so many humiliations, so many assaults on truth and justice, and on the very office he holds. But not a single one of them has. And it's not because the American people don't care. It's because too many people in power stop believing in accountability and have instead decided to bow down to a wannabe dictator. Too many institutions were willing to be bent and broken instead of putting up any resistance. That includes outside corporations, people in power, and our own internal institutions and agencies, because the people enabling him have decided that silence is safer than speaking out. And we have to be honest, they're not just doing it out of fear. They enable him because the power benefits them, financially, politically, and in every other way. They've chosen submission because it pays, and they think we won't stop them. But we will, and we have to stop them. We will stop them come November when we take back both chambers of Congress, and until then, we slow their roll. First, the SAVE Act has passed in the House and is headed to the Senate. We need to call our senators and demand that they vote against it. The number one thing to do is to contact our senators and tell everyone we know to do the same. Second, we need to make a plan to donate to midterm candidates who are standing against the fascist takeover of our country. No donation is too small. Even if Trump doesn't plan to fundraise for the Republican candidates, the Musks and the Teals of the world will. We need to build our own funds for the Democratic candidates. so they can compete against the endless GOP money machines. Third, we need to keep supporting independent media, those still holding the line without corporate backings or political protection. Right now, the most important thing we can do is to identify the voices still telling the truth and stand with them as they risk everything to report what's really happening. I'm laser focused on subscribing to, sharing, and amplifying the work of people who are taking a stand in a hostile environment. If you're in a place to support financially, that makes a big difference. But so does sharing their work, for posting their reporting, and making sure their truth reaches the people who need to hear it. I'm also being intentional about where I spend, supporting non-MAGA companies and non-MAGA creators. Because unlike the far right, we don't have billionaires funding our message. We don't have massive platforms built to carry our voices, but we do have each other. And if we stay committed, that's still enough. And on a personal note, I wanted to thank everyone who's chosen to support my work with a subscription. That support has allowed me to keep everything I write free and accessible to everyone, with nothing behind a paywall, so the truth can reach as many people as possible. So if you've helped make that possible, you're helping all of us keep going. You're part of the reason this message is still getting out. This was all another low point for America. But even in the middle of all that darkness, we saw something good. We saw the best of this country in the survivors who stood up anyway, steady and brave, even as the government that failed them tried to humiliate and silence them once again. They didn't flinch or back down. And they are why I still have hope for America, and you should too. If you've made it this far, we're probably on the same page and definitely on the same side of history. I'm working hard to spread this message and reach as many people as possible. So if you can, please take a moment, make sure you're subscribed to my channel, like this video, leave a comment, anything to tell the algorithm to show it to more people. And for all of my daily posts, you can find me on Substack just by searching Heather Delaney Reese, and I've included a link for you below. And remember, no matter how dark the days get, I will be here every single day, and together, we will always have hope for America. I'll see you tomorrow.